Welcome to the Oasis Network Roadshow. My name is Tom Arnould. I'm your host today. It's a joy to have you on today's Roadshow. But we have another host on today's Roadshow, and her name is Karen Jensen-Salisbury. Karen is a popular host, a well-listened-to host here on the Oasis Network, and she is our co-host on today's Roadshow. So, Karen, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here with you, Tom.
So this is kind of part B. This is the second part of a roadshow that we did just to minister to pastors. Our program director, David Warren, had it in his heart to spend some time just ministering to the ministers. Because, Karen, there are a lot of ministers that listen to the Oasis Network.
Yeah, and I also think it's important, if you're not a pastor, please keep listening, because we're going to have, things that apply to you too, as well as your relationship with your pastor and how to be a help and a blessing to your pastor. And just a little insight too. If you've never been a pastor, how do pastors think? Tom is a pastor right now at Good News Church in Yukon, Oklahoma. I've been a pastor and a pastor's wife. And so we just thought there was some valuable information here for both pastors and for lay people to understand the pastoral relationship.
Yeah. And we also realize that pastors do not have monopolies on calling. It's called fivefold ministry. We honor all the various offices. But as Brother Hagin used to say sometimes, there's going to be more pastors than any of the other fivefold because we need more of them.
Yeah.
Meaning, there's just a big need for people to be assigned or under a pastor. When I use the word under, to be part of that flock or that congregation. So I guess statement number one, all sheep need a sheepfold and all sheep need a shepherd. And so, sheep, naturally speaking, talking about the animal, they're happiest when they're a part of a flock. And your life will be enriched if you're a part of a church family. And I'll promise you this, if he's called you to be a part of a church family, he didn't call you to torpedo the place and divide it and cause strife and be the church police. He's really called you to just be blessed there and enjoy it and let it be the high point of your week.
Absolutely. Well, I think in this first segment, we wanted to talk about relationships. Pastors are humans, just like everybody else. And a lot of times pastors are very isolated because they feel like they can't reveal everything about their true selves, their imperfections and whatnot to their congregation. And sometimes that's true. It's hard for congregations to hear the word through what they view as a, flawed messenger, but that is how all of it comes. But all that to say, sometimes pastors don't have a lot of friends or maybe mentors or people they can talk with. And it's so important for each pastor to have a friend, and especially maybe a friend not attached to the church or in another state, somebody you can talk to and, be honest with. I think accountability is a happy thing. When we had our session talking about this before, Tom and I, on the Roadshow, he mentioned don't get into addiction. But if a pastor is in trouble and they don't have anybody to talk to, that they can't get out of it by themselves. I think being accountable to someone, whether that be another friend in ministry, whether that be a mentor, whether that be even your licensing or ordinating organization, be accountable and somebody that you can talk to. If you're going through trouble, bring it into the light. The devil wants to hide that stuff in the dark and make it a deep, dark secret, and it's going to end up eating your lunch. So I would say, tell somebody, bring it into the light so that you can get help from there.
Yeah. The goal of the devil is very clear. Jesus said, if they strike the shepherd, the sheep will be scattered. So we know the enemy's always out to not just split churches, but he's also out to split the pastor, whether it's in his marriage, in his home life. And so, there is a target on a pastor. And somebody said, well, I think maybe you're playing that up a little bit. But it is true. If you can take down the pastor, you can really confuse a lot of people. So we can't give any place to the devil. We're going to be called. Ultimately, one day we'll be judged by a higher standard. And so we have to live by a higher standard. We shouldn't even presume to be a teacher because we know that teachers will be judged by a higher standard. So if we're going to be judged by higher standards, we got to live a life of morality. We've got to check our motives. We got to check ourselves on money. We got to check ourselves on motivations. What are we doing? why are we doing what we're doing? Are we doing it unto the Lord? It's kind of a rival-based deal. In other words, am I doing this because I'm just trying to compete with someone else? So there's so much. So relationships are vital. And number one relationship, we kind of keyed in on this last time, but for those that maybe didn't hear the previous Roadshow, number one relationship is your wife, okay? If you're going to love your neighbor like yourself, that person you're sharing a bedroom with, that's your number one neighbor. So you need
Right.
need to love your neighbor. Then we talked about family life. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the family life. And then let's talk about some of the relationships beyond those. Okay, I feel like my marriage, I'm spending adequate time. I'm really pastoring my house first. Okay, Karen, so some of the relationships that you feel like as a ministry leader, as a pastor, what are some key vital relationships?
Well, I just think having a friend, especially in ministry, if you are in ministry, it's good to have a friend in ministry who understands, in a way that maybe some others don't. But two, other friendships, just people that you can talk with, people that, you can be yourself with and get good advice from. And then let me just say this, take their advice. I'll tell you a true story about me. When I first, if you listened last time, you heard that my first husband and I pastored a church in Boise, Idaho, and he passed away. He died suddenly at age 37, leaving me to pastor the church, by myself with my wonderful staff. And so I had a wonderful pastor mentor in a nearby state who just kind of took us all, me and my staff and my kids, under his wife's wing. They just did stuff for us. They flew over to visit us. They flew us all over there. They just helped us. He was just available by phone all the time. And so one time I remember telling him, well, God told me to do this. And so I did it, right? And it didn't turn out. I don't even remember what it was. I just remember that he later told me, well, I knew it wasn't going to work out. And I said, well, why didn't you say something? And he said, because you led with, God told me. And you know what? If you lead with God told me, you leave no room for your advisor to give you good advice. So if I believe God puts a mentor and an advisor in our lives, avail yourself to it and listen to them.
Yeah, and be careful who you sit under, because whatever's on them is going to get on you, and that can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing. And so you don't want to, if you get under somebody who's living a double life, that's going to get on you, So you just got to be careful, not suspicious or not judgmental, but you just want to ask the Holy Spirit to set you under people that you feel like this is a healthy relationship. We call it a reciprocal relationship, to where you're not chasing them all the time, calling them, trying to get with them. You let God open the door. There'll be people in your life that he brings into your life. Paul wrote in Philippians 1 about the Philippians. He said, I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, making requests with joy. The relationships that God has for you, you're going to thank God for them, and you're going to pray for them with joy. It'll be a joyful thing. And so, I've said this before, maybe you've heard me say it on the Roadshow, but, there's three different types of relationships: those that drive us, those that drain us, and those that develop us. And so God has friendships in your life that will help develop you, and it'll be an iron sharpening iron. It'll help you keep your edge. Now, Karen, I'll say this. I have relationships outside of the church. By that I mean I have pastoral friends, and I have them from a variety of different backgrounds. I wish I could tell you everybody that I'm a pastoral friend to, that they all see the Bible just the way I do. But if you're involved in a community, you recognize that's not the case. But, your board matters, okay? So I'm just going to say, if you're a pastor, you're going to have certain people, leaders in the church, that you believe the Lord has called them to come alongside you and be a confidant, and they know, they're helping you to just bounce ideas off. They're not running the church, but they're certainly giving you counsel on different things. And so I'm very blessed to have what I consider to be kind of the Jethros, the people that are helping me with blind spots to speak there. And they're not trying to run the church. They have no desire to set the agenda of the church, but they're just saying, if you feel the Lord wants you to do this, here's some thoughts, or here's some ways. So I would say boards are important. And I know somebody said there's only board mentioned in the Bible was the one that Paul was on when he got shipwrecked. I heard about So I know that there's a negative side to that, but in my case, it's been a positive because I feel like it's been a real help for me. So relationships are vital, Karen.
Yeah, and I like what you said too about they help your weaknesses. I think all of us should staff our weaknesses. And what happens to me, everybody has weaknesses, everybody has strengths, everybody, right? And I think too many times if we have a weakness, we want to hide it and we feel threatened by people who are stronger in it than us. Let's say you're not good at money, but the people who are good at money make you feel stupid, so you don't hang around with them. And they are the people you need the most. So I would say, and this is true for everybody in every realm, whether you're a pastor or not, but be aware of your weaknesses and it's not shameful to have a weakness because absolutely everybody's good at something and absolutely everybody's bad at something. So realize I'm not very good at that. I need to find a person who is and not be threatened by them and not be jealous of them. Sometimes we hold those people at arm's length because they make us feel bad, but embrace them. I can think of times, especially when I became a senior pastor, it's like, there's got to be somebody around who knows how to do this because I don't know. Yeah. And I would immediately begin to look around and say, Lord, who can I add to my tool belt of friends or my tool belt of board members or whatever to help me in this area where I'm weak? I think that takes great wisdom and character to admit you have a weakness and find a person who can help you in it.
That's a great statement. Staff your weaknesses. Don't you think, at some level, that's what marriage is, right? It's two people coming together in a complementary relationship where they, typically you marry somebody that has strengths that you don't have, and it's staffing. I don't know if you call it staffing. It's marriaging.
Yeah, well, and too, isn't it funny how when we're opposite like that, sometimes they drive you crazy because they're weak. Why can't they be like me? But, realize that you also have weaknesses and be available. If you're in a church and you see your pastor struggling in an area, be available to help them in it, not to condemn them for their weakness. I just think that's so important.
Relationships matter. If you care about people, even if you preach a dud sermon, they go, you know what? That guy loves me. That guy cares about me. That person is a blessing to me. Brother Hagin would comment about pastors that would see him come into his meetings, and he'd come in about maybe the first song's already started, and he's kind of slipping in, and then towards the end of the service, he's got his entourage just kind of bringing him off the stage, and he used to say, pastors, you can't do that. You can't show up after the first song, and now you've got to protect the call, and you can't get so cluttered in your mind that you can't think of the message that you're supposed to speak. But many of the churches that pastors are listening to me right now, and pastors' wives, full out, you got to be relational.
Touchable.
You just got to spend a little time touchable and just follow up. You gave me this prayer request last week. How's that going? And people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you can remember their names, they just remember their kids' names, remember big events. You can't be there for everything, but you can remember big events. You can remember, deaths of loved ones when that anniversary is coming around. I tell you, the more I talk about this, I love it, Karen. I don't have to pastor. I get to pastor.
Yes.
And so relationships, it's not all. I think, when I was a young pastor, you want to do those power lunches. Oh, Karen, I got to meet with so-and-so because I want to have a power lunch. And, many of them, they could care less about your power lunch. But then I found out there's a lot of people out there. There's people in your congregation, Pastor, they would be thrilled. I started to say to death, but I watch my words. They would be thrilled to life if you just sent them a text or if you just said, hey, man, I'm thinking of you today. I'm praying for you today. That would just make their day. Well, this is the Roadshow. My name is Tom Arnould, and my special co-host today is Karen Jensen-Salisbury. Karen has a rich background of ministry. I mean, you're hearing today, you're not talking to her, but you're listening today to a professor at Rhema. I mean, you're talking to a lady who pastors, she teaches, she has a wonderful ministry. So really, you're blessed to have somebody that Rhema thinks enough of to say, we want you to mentor the next generation. So Karen, thank you. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back right after this break, and we're going to continue to discuss the role of a pastor.
I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Roadshow. It's a special day on the Roadshow today. You have two hosts. I am Karen Jensen-Salisbury, one of your hosts, and we have Tom Arnould with us. Hey, Tom.
How are you doing, Karen?
It's good to have you. It's good to be here. We're talking about pastors because Pastor Tom is a wonderful pastor in Yukon, Oklahoma, and I have been in the pastoral ministry along with other kinds of ministries. And so we're talking to pastors, but we're also talking to congregation members. If you have a pastor, you qualify to listen to this show. And I don't know about you, Tom, but I kind of wanted to talk about the love walk and forgiveness as an element to that, because when you're a pastor, it's easy to get hurt by people. It just is. People are people everywhere you go, right? And so he's making a funny face at me.
Karen Jensen-Salisbury is speaking great words of wisdom this very moment. Yes, 100%. She actually put together this outline for this roadshow, and I'm telling you, you're hitting the bullseye. Walking in love is vital to the life of a pastor. I don't know all the formulas for a successful life, one man said. But he said, I have found this formula for a miserable life. It's called walk in bitterness.
Ooh.
So you're going to have to love people. You're going to have to bless people. Sheep bite.
Yes.
Goats
Ow.
kick. So you just have to know that's part of the job.
You know, I heard Billy Joe Doherty, a wonderful pastor here from Tulsa who's gone to heaven now, but he told a story when he was a young minister. He was in a service with an much older gentleman, who'd been in the ministry for years and years and is successful at it. And Billy Joe had a chance to talk with him after, and he said, sir, I'm just starting out in ministry. You've been going for years and years. If there was one thing you could tell me to help me on my road to success in ministry, what would that be? And the guy didn't even hesitate. He said, if you can keep from getting bitter, you'll make it. And that always... yeah, you remember that? Yeah, I think
Karen.
that's so vital. And don't we all know pastors who've gotten bitter because people either intentionally or unintentionally hurt you. Pastors pour out their lives to people and they give the best that they can, and sometimes they just get schmacked, And so one of the classes I teach at Rhema is to a third-year pastors group. And what I make them do at the beginning of every time we meet for class, I make them read out loud 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, and from the Amplified, and I actually put their name in, or make them say I. So I endure long, I'm patient and kind, I'm never envious, I never boil over with jealousy. Things like I believe the best of every person, I take no offense, those kinds of things. And the reason I make them do this is because I truly believe if we can master this, really all people, but especially pastors, then we don't take offense. We're not touchy, we're not fretful, we're not resentful. We take no account of the evil done to us. We pay no attention to a suffered wrong. Imagine that. But if God says we can do it, we can. And that's such a life of safety and protection. If you don't take the fiery darts that are shot at you, you hold up the shield of faith and say, I take no account of that done to me. I pay no attention when someone tries to hurt me. It's such a life of freedom.
Yeah. I'm going to say, Karen, you are spot on. That you are so right. Like I said, you're the one that came up with the talking points for this interview, and this is so good because pastors by nature are caring people. Pastors by nature are somewhat sensitive. They try to be sensitive to the needs of others. They come not to be ministered to. They truly want to minister to others. And it can be just so weird when they're betrayed or whenever their motivations are taken wrong or people say things that are so hurtful, and it can cause bitterness there, a root of bitterness. And so, you got to let it go. It's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, as Karen said. And it's interesting, that first word in the Greek it's translated long-suffering in the King James. It's also translated patience, but it's specifically in reference to people patience. So it's relational patience. I just think it's so wise or so amazing. The Holy Spirit said, here's the number one thing you need to know about love. It knows how to suffer long. And I really think long-suffering is the better word to describe that Greek word. It's a picture of can take a hit. You're able to, take a punch in a spiritual sense, that you're just saying, okay, I'm going to take the high road on this. I'm going to forgive. And so, if you get into unforgiveness, you lose your joy. And so nobody wants to go to a church where the pastor's a sad sack up there, So you just got to keep that spark and forgive everybody and bless everybody. And here's a good thing. You get to model forgiveness, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So people circle back. Sometimes people think they were real wise when they did this to a pastor, and then they grow a little bit, and about 10 years later, they circle back and they go, Pastor, we love you, man. You were, you cared. And so, we're not looking for that, but the reality is it happens. So, Karen, forgiveness, that's vital, walking in love.
Well, I was going to say the only way to walk in this kind of love that God sets forth, just in 1 Corinthians alone, 1 Corinthians 13, is to forgive, to get good at it, to get quick at it. They say that unforgiveness, of course, is like drinking poison and expecting the other guy to die. I have a book on forgiveness, not as a commercial, but if you want to, my website is KarenSalisbury.org. It's called I Forgive You, but because Christians know we should forgive, but, right? Whenever I'm talking to a group of Christians, I don't say, are you maybe harboring unforgiveness? Because we all say, oh, no, I forgave them. But, right? But I'm telling you, so then I ask, have you ever been hurt? And of course, everybody raises their hand, right? Because if you've been alive longer than 15 minutes, you've been hurt. And so, but the problem is everybody's going to get hurt, but staying hurt is unforgiveness. Yeah. And it's like drinking poison and expecting the other guy to die. It's eating your lunch. And so we've got to get, pastors, but really everybody, needs to get good at forgiving quickly, first time, every time, big sins, little sins. I always tell people the best time to practice walking in love is while you're driving. Because somehow we Americans in our cars, we think, how dare they cut me off, or they're an idiot, or the things we say in our cars, right? Yeah. But I have students come back all the time, the ones who I'm making say this verse, and they'll say to me, man, Miss Karen, I was out driving and I heard your voice in my head. Love endures long, it's patient, it's kind, Yeah. It's so we got to practice walking in love.
Yeah, and maybe the other side to that could be helpful to someone. Maybe there's somebody that's been very divisive in your church, and they've really been a unhealthy member of your congregation. There was times that I remember one time there was a situation going on at our church, and the Lord took me over there in the book of Romans when Paul said, mark those that cause divisions among you. And he just gave me that word, that scripture, mark them. You need to know who they are. Paul, who wrote 1 Corinthians chapter 13, also said, Demas the coppersmith has done me a lot of harm. So it doesn't mean you're saying that from a vindictive spirit, but you're saying it as a protective deal. I mean, it's almost like a parent who is just trying to protect a child from getting into an unhealthy relationship. And there's been certain relationships through the years that I knew the Lord. I mean, one time I felt like the Lord gave me this scripture in Amos where it says, how can two walk together unless they be in agreement? And so the Lord was just telling me, Tom, you're not going to be able to walk to an agreement with this person. You're on different paths here. And so there is zero unforgiveness in my heart. I want the best for them. I bless them. I love them. But I know we can't walk together because you're on a different path. And I'm not trying to say I'm on the right path, you're on the wrong path. I just know we're on different paths. So I'm only using that to help some pastors out there that maybe you've had leaders in your church that have been very divisive. We're not saying that you're going to keep them in that inner circle, but we're saying you have no desire for ill will. You don't want anything bad. There's a whole teaching in the Old Covenant that talks about when you see your enemy in trouble, you're not to rejoice in that. And so anyway, there's the balance. Paul did talk about certain people you need to avoid. And I think if somebody is creating division in the church. You need to address it. One time the Lord just said to me, address that. That's how he said. He didn't say confront them or rebuke them, and he could have said all those because those are Bible terms. But in my spirit, I just felt like the Lord said, address that situation. And so there are going to be times you have to address things. But like I say, bitterness is the absolute formula for a miserable life. So don't go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, pastors have to protect their sheep from wolves and other things. That's what we do. You know, we are shepherds. And so absolutely. And I think another misconception sometimes is that forgiveness is being a doormat, you know, but or walking in love is being a doormat. But I always ask this question, did Jesus walk in love? Yes. Was he a doormat? No. Right? And forgiveness is more a heart issue. Some things, you know what? Trust is earned and deserved. Forgiveness is unconditional. We forgive because it helps our heart. It's how our heart goes free. It does not mean you invite this person back into your inner circle, like you mentioned, or that you trust them in business again, or you trust them in relationship again. That is earned. But forgiveness, you know if you've forgiven them in your heart. And the only way for you to go free and not let what they have done, you know, hang on to you and ruin your future is to forgive. So you forgive in your heart. And then sometimes things do need to be dealt with. People need to be sued. There needs to be, you know, what do you call those things that when somebody needs to stay away from you in the police...
restraining orders.
A restraining order, yeah. Obviously, if someone murders somebody, they go to jail for that.
Right.
They go to prison for that. But forgiveness is what happens in your heart, and that's how you go free, and not let something stupid that somebody else did eat your lunch and cause you to be bitter and affect your future.
And from a pastoral standpoint, I would just say there's sometimes that it would just be wiser for the health of the congregation for there to be a separation.
Absolutely.
To where if somebody is really divisive, it's taken too much of the pastor's focus. You know, the pastor, instead of focusing on this whole congregation, he's really spending 80% of his week dealing with 2 or 3 relationships in the church. That's unfair to the rest of the church. Yeah. So you really have to just say, look, we need to make some changes here because it's unfair to the remainder. It's almost like the child... the family that has 3 or 4 kids and there's one that's always acting out and the other 3 are neglected. Well, that's not fair to those other 3 that are trying to do their part. And then I would just say, you know, one time, you know, Karen, I share some of these things. I pastored for 30 years, so you've seen a few things along the way. But one time I heard the Lord give me the word winnowing. I didn't even know what that word meant. I was a young pastor, and I didn't even know what the word meant. I looked it up in the dictionary, and it said to separate the desirable from the undesirable. Ooh, and the Lord showed me a vision, and he said, I'm going to separate some stuff out. And he told me, Ecclesiastes 3, there's a time to rend, and I'm going to rend some stuff out. So, you know, I didn't want that to happen. I wasn't looking for that to happen, and I'd go the extra mile, but I knew the Lord knew in my heart that I'd endeavor to do all that I could do. Karen, I want to ask you a question. What is your website? Tell me what your web address is.
KarenSalisbury.org. That's Salisbury like the steak, SALISBURY.org. What's your website?
Well, my website is, our website, the church's website is gn.church, like GN, like good news.church. And then we have, you know, different platforms where you can get services and programs and what have you. But back to you, Karen, I want to say this. Some of the stuff I think you teach on a variety of things. Your teaching on parenting is tremendous. What's your passion? If you were going to say my number one love, what's something you really love to teach about?
Well, I do love to teach on love, you know, because God loves us. God is love. You know, the gospel in a word is love. And and Jesus gave us one commandment to make up for the 10. I mean, to answer all 10, which is love one another. I just think it's majoring on the majors when you teach on love.
Okay, we're going to come back right after this break and continue our discussion on the role of a pastor.
The Roadshow is a listener favorite, which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Roadshow also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup, and contact information and links to our Roadshow sponsors and its hosts. So join us for the Roadshow, whether on your radio or on your computer at oasisnetwork.org.
It's a joy to have you along with us today on today's Roadshow. My name is Tom Arnould. I'm co-hosting today's program with our special guest, Karen Jensen-Salisbury. Karen, I'm looking forward to this final half of today's Roadshow.
Me too. It's going to be good.
So we're talking about the role of a pastor, in case you're just joining us. And our program director, David Warren, he had approached Karen and said, what about you and Tom working on a program, and you would just minister to pastors, not exclusively to pastors, but, kind of have a pastoral theme, and then kind of go from there. And so Karen and I are enjoying this. We had a previous Roadshow where we talked about the role of a pastor, and then we thought we'd cover a few other things. And, if you can help the pastor, you help the community. If you help a pastor, you help hundreds of people. And so, it's a very important calling. It's not the only calling, okay? We know that there are fivefold ministry. There's people in the ministry of helps. There's a myriad of people. And all the people that are in prisons, we love you. We wash your feet. All the people that are in nursing homes, all the people that are ministering to unhoused people, whatever you're called to do, as far as I'm concerned, if Jesus Christ called you to do it, we honor you for that, and we thank you. People that are working with people that are drug addicted. I mean, what a high calling. And so, there's no part of me that wants this program to come off like this is the ultimate call. It just happens to be what I'm called to do. But if I was called to do something else, I'd be fired up about that, and just happen to be called to be a pastor. So Karen has also served as a pastor, and now she is a teacher of pastors and ministers to pastors. So Karen, what's on your heart to share, this second part of today's Roadshow?
Well, I wrote a book with a friend of mine called 12 Ways to Be a Blessing to Your Church. And I just thought, let's bless the pastors this segment and talk to the people who are sitting in the pews. How can you be a blessing to your pastor? Because sometimes pastors seem like, wow, they're up on a pedestal. They never have any problems. They know God super close and nothing ever goes wrong in their life. And, of course, that's a fallacy. We pastors are human just like everybody else. And there are ways that we can be a blessing to them. One is to pray every day for your pastor. Instead of talking about him, instead of being mad. And I used to tell my congregation when I was pastoring, if you haven't been mad at me yet, you just haven't been here long enough. Because the devil...
there's a lot of wisdom right there.
Yeah. The devil always wants to separate you from your word bringer. And have you maybe pull up roots and go to another church because you're mad, right? But it's those who be planted in the house of the Lord that flourish. And so, the madder you are, you're not helping yourself or your pastor. So pray for them. If they said something you don't like, instead of talking about it, pray for them. If anybody can hear from God, they can. Right? And just pray for them in general because they need extra strength. Like Tom pointed out in one of our segments, there's a target on the back of pastors. The devil doesn't want your pastor to succeed, therefore make you succeed, therefore grow your community and all that, right? So pray for them. Another thing you can do to bless your pastor is note their special occasions. Celebrate them on their birthdays and their anniversaries and their church anniversaries. Make a big deal out of things that are a big deal to them. That encourages pastors. Another one is, obviously, this one's huge. Get involved in helps ministry. Be a helper, okay? Don't sit in the pew and think that announcement is for somebody else. Get up off the couch and go help at church. I'm telling you what, this is eternal work. You are blessed to be a help in the helps ministry. Nobody's trying to take away your free time. Somebody's trying to add eternal value to your life. So get involved in the helps ministry. If you don't know what to do, just see what area in the church needs your help the most and put your hand to it. And God will promote you to the thing that maybe you do want to do. Another is to follow through with your commitments. Oh man, I cannot emphasize this one enough because, if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to be there at a certain time, be there. Man, there's just nothing more important to a pastor than somebody you can count on. Be the person who gets it done. Be the person who's committed. Another one is submit with style and always smile. In other words, sometimes you're not maybe going to agree with everything the way it's going. Maybe you would do something different, but somebody has to be in charge at the church, and that somebody is the pastor, okay? I love this verse in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17. It says, "Obey those who rule over you and be submissive." Now, this is the Bible I'm reading. This is not Karen or Tom's idea, right? Be submissive, for they watch for your souls as those who must give account. Let them do it with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you. Okay? It's profitable for you to submit to your pastor. Do you have any thoughts there, Tom, before I go on?
Well, I just think, Karen, everything that you're saying, I mean, there's just so much wisdom. And, I think people realize when you bless your pastor, you bless that local church, there's going to be rewards for all eternity. And people are serving the body of Christ, but I'm telling you, honestly, maybe 80% of the way that a lot of people are serving the body of Christ or the ministry of Jesus Christ on the earth today, it's flowing through that local church.
Yep.
And so you need to be in a church where you believe the Lord has called you. You need to be planted. That passage you read about how the devil wants to get you offended towards the very person that is feeding you the Word of God, and how that's a great strategy of the enemy. Boy, if we can just get this person mad at the person that's called to be their shepherd. And I think the tragedy sometimes is, one of the things Jesus said, the Lord sent Israel prophets, but they didn't receive them. So there was not like the Lord didn't care enough to send them anybody. And what's the tragedy in my heart is when I know full out God has sent a family, a pastor, but they didn't receive that pastor. They were flighty or fickle, and they got easily offended about something. And honestly, sometimes it's not until the kids are grown and they look back and they go, you know what? We were right where we were supposed to be, but we just got a little jittery and we jumped ship. So, I'm just soaking in what you're saying here, Karen, because it's like every one of these is not just a talking point, but it's a whole message in and of itself. So go ahead and read some more there about how to bless the pastor.
A couple more are recognize the trap of familiarity. How many know when you get too familiar with somebody, you see all their foibles, right? All their weaknesses. Right. Oh my gosh, they're human just like me. They shouldn't say that. They shouldn't do that. Why are they like that? Right? Be careful, because what is that phrase? Familiarity breeds contempt. And so I think you have to watch that in a marriage. You have to watch that with your close relationships, but I think you especially have to with your pastor. If you've been in your church for any amount of time, they've done something wrong, and you kind of can say, yeah, there they go again, right? Be careful, because they are God's anointed, right? They're God's gift to you. And if you don't receive them as a gift, it won't affect your life the same way as if you receive them as a gift from God. Another one is overcome offenses. I think we've kind of talked on this. It's easy to get offended in church. Somehow I think that we expect more from Christians. We expect more from a pastor. We think they should never hurt our feelings. They should never offend us. Hello. Luke chapter, one of the chapters in Luke says, offense is sure to come. Well, there you go. Right? Yeah. So you just have to get good at forgiving quickly and understanding that offense comes, but I'm not going to be offended to the point where I drop my faith. I drop my commitment to this church, I drop my commitment to my spouse, whatever it is. Stick in there. The devil makes you offended because he wants you to quit whatever it is that's feeding you and helping you. So, overcome offense. Another is speak faith-filled words over your church, over your pastor, whatever. Be careful what you say. The Bible says, Mark 11:23, we can have whatever we say. Romans 4:17, call those things that be not as though they were. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Our tongues were meant to create. God created the world with words. And our words create our life. They are the boundaries of our life. So be careful what you're saying to your family, to your friends, but especially over your church and over your pastor. If you can't, remember how your mama used to tell you, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything? That's a great policy. Watch your words. Another is invite people to church. Help the church grow. Invite your friends. Invite people to go. Take them out to lunch afterwards. Just be an inviter and a gatherer. Another one is be a consistent giver. Wow, every pastor could preach on this for a while. Giving is your covenant connection. It's what makes you a part of your local church and a part of the body of Christ. It's what allows God into your finances. So be a tither so that he can open the windows of heaven to you and pour out a blessing, it says in Malachi 3:10. Be a giver so that it's given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And it helps your church. We're supposed to bring our tithes and offerings to the storehouse to keep it going so it can be a blessing in the community. So be a consistent giver. And another is be a part of the outreach. Reach out to others. Churches are not supposed to be bless me clubs, us four and no more. We're supposed to be reaching out and including those who need to know God.
Karen, as you're reading that, I'm thinking of a word that Brother Hagin spoke about. It's kind of a theme the last part of his life. And the statement that he made was, the Lord wants to build up strong local churches that will preach the word in flow with the Holy Spirit. But the word there is strong local churches. I think sometimes we confuse strong local churches with large local churches. Now, I believe God wants large and strong. But the fact is you can have a strong church that's not particularly a large church, and some of it's just the demographics. I mean, I talked to a pastor not too long ago, and he told me he was in a community of, 900 people, and he had 90 people in his church. And I said, man, you got 10% of the 10%. Town in your church, So it's all a ratio, you're going to have. But sometimes people get clouded with that big church to where they are so striving after the numbers that there's really not a strong church. And so I think the definition of a strong church is where the word's being taught and they're learning to flow with the Holy Spirit. So we just encourage you to plug into your church and be faithful and be an Aaron and Hur and help your pastor. I'll tell you one thing. When you bless your pastor, and I'm not saying this because I am a pastor, I'm just saying it because of 30 years I've seen people that have had the attitude, how can we help the mission of the church? How can we move this mission forward, whether they're through board members or through ministry of helps people? I just see how their life is enriched and their family's enriched and their quality of life is so much higher. So, we just are big believers in the local church, and we just are grateful to be able to be on today's Roadshow. Karen, tell me again your website address, please.
KarenSalisbury.org, and that's Salisbury like the steak, SALISBURY.org.
Yeah, Karen has a lot of really helpful information there, and I just would encourage you that on various roadshows, whether it's David Warren or the various hosts that we have on the Oasis Network, don't overlook the resource of the app and with all the archived roadshows that are on there, because these are just some phenomenal guests that we've been able to interview through the years. And somebody said, if you went to one of their seminars, you'd have to pay all this kind of money, but they'll just tell you for free on the radio.
That's right.
So anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and finish strong with our last segment on the role of a pastor.
I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world.
Oasis Network.
It's been a great day on the Roadshow. I'm your host, Karen Jensen-Salisbury. I'm here with your other host, Tom Arnould, and we are talking about the role of a pastor and really kind of the role of a person in the congregation as well. What tips for how to bless your pastor, and also just things to talk about for pastors. Tom is a pastor right now at Good News Church in Yukon, Oklahoma, and I have been a pastor a couple of times. So we just wanted to share with you things that are on our heart. This segment, last one, here we go. We kind of wanted to talk about transition and retirement. Tom, why don't you start us off?
Well, first of all, as a pastor, one thing I realized, I had two groups of people in the church, and those that retired well, and then those that I knew it was a real shocker, their retirement, and it was a difficult time in their life. And I decided early on, I think I want to be in part of that group that retires well. So I started pastoring pretty young. But I was surrounded by what I called that first gen of charismatic renewal people, the people that came out of all the denominational churches, all the historic churches that were baptized in the Holy Spirit. And so many of them had just been wise and they had good careers, and I could just see they really enjoyed the golden years. They enjoyed them. And I thought to myself, that's really nice. Fortunately, Karen and I had a board that listened to a series it's called parsonage.org. It's focused on the family. They have a man named H.P. London that for years did a podcast or a radio broadcast called Pastor to Pastor. He's since passed on, and that's James Dobson's brother-in-law. And I used to listen to that, and they did a series once on just the pastor's salary, the pastor's retirement, and our board members listened to that early on, and they kind of took that on. It's like, hey, part of our job as a board is we need to make sure this pastor's taken care of. Not just like now, because sometimes in my circles, people live real large and they make big splashes, but they don't give a lot of forethought to the future. And so I just think it's really neat, that when I see pastors that are a part of non-denominational churches, sometimes the historic churches, it's a foregone conclusion that board is responsible for helping with their future goals, financial goals. But sometimes in our circles, it's not approached or it's not dealt with. And so anyway, I just, for every pastor, in my community, Karen, the pastors in my community in Yukon, they call me the Godfather, okay?
I love
because they know I've been around for a while. And so, if I ever say anything when we have lunch or something, they go, no, that's the Godfather talking there. So maybe you're listening to this and you're a younger pastor. We talked about taking care of your health, taking care of your marriage, taking care of your morals, guarding your life against unforgiveness. But we're also going to say, look, you want to think ahead because the future comes and it's going to be here if the Lord tarries. It's going to come sooner than you think, so you need to think ahead. So go ahead, Karen.
Well,
you pick up.
I was just thinking when you said that, it's true. A lot of times when we first started out in the pastoral ministry, we all thought Jesus would be back before we ever got old, right? And I'm just here to tell you that soon is a different time to Jesus than it is to us. When he said, I'm coming back soon. I think that we should live every day like he's not coming back, and then be happy when he does. So we must have a plan for the future and have a plan for retirement. Now, you might be listening and thinking, yeah, well, it's too late, Karen. I'm at that age and I haven't made a plan. But, I think anything we give our attention to, the Lord will help us with. I don't think anything is impossible. God can make a way for you. Don't run away from it. Run towards it and say, okay, Lord, here's where we are today. I didn't, in fact, I think my husband and I both opted out of Social Security way back when, which is dumb. If you have an opportunity and you haven't already done that, don't do it. But if you did, then here's where we are. But how many know God still has a good plan from where you are today? Focus on it. Get some good financial advice. Get some advice from pastors who've done it right. Decide, I'm going to finish strong and be able to retire. Don't keep pastoring when you're done, if you're supposed to be done. Sometimes people keep working just because they have to have the income. But in pastoral ministry, that's kind of dangerous because a calling is a calling and seasons are seasons, and God has you where he wants you at a certain time. So don't just keep pastoring because of the paycheck. You know what I mean? God has a good plan for you right where you are.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of a touchy topic because it's certainly not one that you're going to hear a lot of discussion on, but if you're a part of a church congregation, or maybe you're in your church and you're a board member to your pastor, part of the inherent roles of a board member is that you are responsible for the oversight of certain expenditures, and part of those expenditures would be the pastoral salary and also his retirement and just health benefits and things of that nature. And that's the practical side, but it's kind of what rounds out the church. Instead of making it just kind of a flash in the pan, we're here, there, gone tomorrow, here today, gone tomorrow, but we're really building for the future. And one day this pastor, he's going to move on, and we just want him blessed coming in and blessed going out. And then let me say this, pastors are always going to pastor.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense? In other words, you're going to pastor when you go to Walmart. You're going to pastor when you're never going to say, oh, I'm retired from pastoring, meaning you're always going to love people, and you're always going to be helping, and you're always going to be blessing people, but it may look a little different in terms of the pulpit ministry may be a little different, or maybe you're in a different role on a staff to where you're the emeritus pastor or what have you. But, I just want to encourage board members out there, take care of your pastor. And that doesn't mean, he's living some, crazy out of balance life with the funds of the church, but it just means, he's taken care of in a healthy way. So back to you.
Well, and if we're talking about a time when a pastor is retired from the pulpit or the church, becomes a pastor emeritus or whatever, then we're talking about handing the baton on to who's going to pastor next. And I think that takes a good plan. You and I are at an age, Tom, I've worked in the Rhema alumni office, seen a lot of pastors coming to this age where they feel like they're kind of done as the pastor. Who will pastor after me? And there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of different theories about it. But first of all, I think you have to give it some attention. And you have to bring your congregation along on this journey with you. And I think it has to be gradual. I'm thinking of one pastor and his wife I know who I just would say they did it right, if you will. And it was a 5-year plan of transition. And they first had people applied. They just had anybody who felt like they wanted to be the pastor within their church. And I think maybe there was even a candidate without. And they interviewed them, and they gave them opportunity to preach. And they did, for a while, they just went through those people, 4 or 5 of them that applied for the job. And they had them preach to the congregation. And they let the congregation know what they were doing. I think you have to involve your congregation in the process. You know what I mean? And they prayed a lot, and they had a prayer group that was assigned just to pray for the transition, And I just think the more time you take to do it and the better plan you have of who to promote to that position, because basically you're getting a new dad, in the church. And you can't just spring that on a congregation or, decide. Right. Now, again, we are talking about non-denominational churches, kind of in our camp, because denominational churches often switch pastors every few years anyway, or they have a plan for who's going to take over next. But if it's a church, especially when you started or you've been pastoring for years and years, you need a plan for transition to pass that baton.
Yeah. I would just say, generally speaking, pastors, live within your means. Part of the situation is just live within your means, and, you don't want to be a distraction with the way you handle finances to where all of a sudden people are having a hard time hearing your message because you're just. One time I had an opportunity, Karen, I'm going to tell you this. One time I was a young pastor and church was just starting off and we were growing, but I was a single guy and hadn't got married yet. And I tell you, there was this car dealer in town and he said, Tom, I found this really good car. And if I mention the name, you would all agree it's a really good car. And he called me and he said, Tom, this will make you a good car. And he was telling me all about it. And trust me, it was flashy, big time flashy. And I thought, well, Lord, I was praying. I said, God, is this the car you want me to have? And I heard the Lord say to me, he gave me a scripture out of Corinthians when Paul said, giving none offense. And the Lord said, Tom, now if you can get that car, but you know what? The size of the congregation you have right now, if you come sporting up in that thing, that's going to be a distraction. And so I knew he didn't have any problem with me being blessed. He doesn't have any problem with prosperity. And trust me, God has been so good to my wife and I, and we are very grateful. But I also have to know I get paid for what I do, but I'm not doing it because I'm being paid. Does that make sense? In other words, if you pay me better, you'll get a better sermon. That's not the motivation. The motivation is I'm just honoring God. So I would just say to pastors, live in your means, and we can kind of get competitive and try to get into rivalry. That's no fun. Just fulfill your call and be a giver and bless other people, and just don't do things that are going to draw a lot of unnecessary distractions to where people can't hear your message anymore because of the distractions you've created.
Yep. And
this is the part of the Roadshow where they play, and these views are not necessarily those of the. So I am solo on this one, Karen. Okay, so I want to make it clear. These are not the views of this is just me as a guy that's been in ministry saying you might want to put this in the mix when you're making a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Tom and I are both agreeing we are not experts. We don't know all the answers to anything, but we have just hopefully come and shared with you from our hearts. Lots of these things are subjective. Our number one thing would be to tell you, seek the Lord on all of this. What's good for you, because not every good idea, again, is a God idea for you, for your church, for your family. And so be sure to seek the Lord. So Tom, as we wind up today, would you pray for our audience?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Father, thank you, first of all, for this privilege that you have given Karen and I to be able to share a little bit about the role of a pastor and pastor life and the congregational life. That's an important part. And Father, thank you for the Oasis Network. Thank you for Walnut Grove Church and the heart that the Oasis Network has for local pastors. And Father, we just thank you so much for everyone that's listening today. And Father, I know that everyone is endeavoring to honor you. The fact that they're listening to this program is just an expression of their desire to run to win and to give glory to God in their calling. And I just bless them, and I pray, Father, that they would know above all else, we love them, we bless them, we're proud of them, we're thankful that they're our co-laborers in the kingdom. And Father, just thank you that we get to spend eternity together. Karen, I want to say this. Whenever somebody comes to Good News Church and they say, well, we heard you on the radio or we listen to the Oasis Network, those are my best leads.
There you go.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
They're like the biggest low maintenance, high, sincere, they're just low drama people, So I have to say, when I'm talking to my Oasis Network family, I'm grateful for all of you, because I just see a whole host of people that are being a blessing to their churches all over the country, through the internet, all over the world.
Yes, amen. Listeners, thanks for joining us today. This is Tom Arnould and Karen Jensen-Salisbury saying it's been another great Roadshow.